Hello and welcome to Hashavua. My name is Yair Alon and I am a rabbi living in Brazil. You can find videos on my channel about the Parashiot of the Torah and the Daily Zohar, both in Portuguese and our new projects Talmud Vibes and Hashavua in English. Remember that all the videos have subtitles available in both languages, so be sure to turn them on. Check them out and enjoy. So, in case you missed our previous videos of this series, here is the link to the playlist. I don't know if it's here or here, but click here and you will be taken there. Make sure to watch it and let us know what you think of it, okay? So, if you did watch it, thank you for coming back. This week's Dapim, we are going from 10 to 16. And we begin with our sages further elaborating on details about the four primary categories of damage, in which of these details would apply exclusively to one of these categories, but none to the other. So, what characteristics could be applied, for example, to damage caused by ox, but not to fire, or to fire, but not to peat, and etc. Then, two interesting discussions are made. One regarding responsibility for damage when more than one person is involved. So, for example, let's say that 5 bulls from 5 different owners gore a man. And up to the 4th goring, the man was relatively fine. But then with the 5th and final gore, the man is killed. Should all the oxen and their owners be held responsible for the death, or only the owner of the 5th goring ox is to be blamed by the death? Another example is if one person facilitates damage. Let's say I hire 10 people to watch my ox because I know it's a wild animal and that he can escape and cause damage. So one of the guys I hire at some specific moment has to go to the bathroom. And when he does so, he leaves the place where he and the 9 other people are, together with the ox, and he doesn't close the door very well. Because of that, the ox escapes the place and indeed causes damage. How do we deal with that? Are the 9 watchers to be held responsible, as well as the one that left the door open? Am I, the owner, to be held responsible at all, in parts, none at all? How do we deal with that? Tell me in the commentary, how would you analyze these 2 cases? Were you the judge in Talmudic times? After that, the Talmud conversation goes into the matter of whether slaves can be taken as payment for debt when there is no more land to be offered in compensation. Here, it's worth mentioning a note about slaves and slavery. Keep in mind that things were very different at the time of Talmud and Torah time. Basically, every culture around the Mediterranean regarded the existence of slavery as just a normal feature of society. If you had debts and you couldn't afford to pay them, you could sell yourself as a slave to someone else. Also, in wars, it was common to be made a prisoner and then be sold as a slave. So basically, a slave was considered kind of a property some people had. Not different from today when we have cars, computers, TVs, and etc. This is not the place to discuss slaves and their status in Torah law, but it is interesting to notice also that even among ancient cultures, Torah had amazingly humanistic laws when it came to slaves, such as the idea that a slave couldn't be a slave for more than 7 years, and they had to be freed after that, in the sabbatical years. Well, in any case, since slaves were seen as property, worth money, in this part of the Talmud, the sages want to know if we can use slaves for paying debts. The discussion on the topics becomes so heated between 2 sages that things get really tense. If you want to check what an angry sage is like, make sure to check Bava Kamma 12a, and check what happened between Rav Ula and Rav Nachman. Once everyone calms down, there is a new debate, now on a different topic. Consecrated firstborns, and how situations should be handled when temple offerings are involved in a damage incident. The sages analyze the issue using a case based on an ox. You see, Talmud rabbis do love talking about oxen. So what's the case related to consecrated firstborn? What is that? Well, it's actually very simple. Suppose I have a lot of oxen, and then a firstborn is born. According to Torah law, a firstborn animal without blemish is automatically for the temple, to be taken to the priests in Jerusalem and then to be offered to God. But suppose I live in the northern area of Israel, and God only knows when I will take that ox to the temple to really leave it there with the priests. And meanwhile, the ox is with me at my home, and it gores someone. In this case, that it causes a damage should be considered my property, and I am the owner responsible to pay for the damage, or is it already temple property owned by the priests, by the Levites, by God himself, and they should take care of paying damages? See the complications arising here? Again, I'd like to know what's your opinion on that. How should we deal with that case if we were the judges? Beside this first scenario, there is another one. What if a regular ox gores and kills a sanctified animal? Or for that matter, any other property set aside to be offered in the temple? If regular situations were already complex for normal stuff, getting the temple involved in the evaluations make the law even more nebulous. Even though there is kind of an obsession with oxen in this section of Talmud, there are three interesting mentions of a different primary category of damage on the tractate, and that is the category of fire. And the Talmud tries to discover what fire has as a distinguishing feature that puts it apart from other damagers. Remember, ox, maveh, understood as man, and bor. Bava Kamma 10 tells us, 10a, tells us that the fire is different than any other damager because it consumes both fitting and not fitting objects, meaning objects that are indeed used to produce fire, like wood or straw, but also other objects that wouldn't usually burn in fire. Besides that the second distinguishing feature of fire is that it is the typical manner of fire to proceed and cause damage, as if it was his nature, if we could say that. And further down, the same daf mentions concealed items that can be damaged by fire, and then mentions damages caused by someone feeding the fire so that it spreads out of control. Now, I'd like to reflect on these distinguishing features and maybe try to find a symbolic meaning for them. As usual in these cases, please be aware that the following considerations are mine and not part of the Talmudic debate, okay? Upon reading these mentions to fire in Bava Kamma 10a, the first thing that came to my mind was how unbalanced emotions can be damaging to ourselves and to others, and how some of us act and live in such a way as to bring out the worst kind of emotional responses possible. Although the terms fitting and not fitting are literally referring to flammable or non-flammable material in the Talmud, these concepts can be useful when we elaborate our metaphor for the emotions. Judaism emphasizes how the mitzvot, life in community, and the connection to the cycles of the year and liturgy to the prayers will bring us a more balanced and bountiful life. As we read in Deuteronomy 28:2, for instance, all these blessings will come on you and accompany you if you obey the Lord your God. If we think of emotions as fire, mitzvot and midot would be fitting materials to kindle and feed it. Just as fire, which can be used to prepare our food, give us light in the dark, and keep us warm when it's used properly, it can instead, when misused, destroy a home and hurt those who live in it. Our constant competition against others or isolation from others, overuse or misuse of social media to boost our egos, humiliation of others, and all types of degradation like bullying are not fitting materials to be used in our inner fire, to kindle our fire. Yet, this is what most people constantly feed their fires with. When we start to understand this deep inside ourselves, it is only natural that we start desiring for a more peaceful environment and craving for feeding material to our fire, like the Shabbat, for example, which, by the way, is celebrated by lighting candle and then no other kind of fire. Only holy fire is allowed. Being with our family, with our community, listening to the wisdom of our elders and sages, singing together are all fitting material for fire. This heals and strengthens us in a way that our fire becomes a life-giving source and not a damaging force. After that, the Talmud says that one distinguishing feature of fire is that it will burn even concealed things. For example, suppose a fire starts and burns your wall. Under Torah law, I have to pay it. But then suppose between the bricks of this wall, you had hidden $1,000. The fire will consume that too, of course. Should I pay for the wall and for the $1,000? Since I am dealing with the analogy and the metaphor, I will leave the halachic discussion for you. But when Bava Kamma mentions concealed items destroyed by the fire, what it brings to mind, at least to my mind, is that the word concealed here refers to a deliberate attempt at hiding something. So we would be discussing maybe cases in which our emotions, again the fire, are destroying things being hidden by others. How so? What am I thinking about? Well, actually, it reminds me of a teaching the Talmud itself brings to us. Don't talk about a rope next to someone whose father was hanged. Why is that? What does that mean? People will have deep feelings about things, especially about bad moments in their lives. They will have traumas, struggles, personal issues with their lives, and personal matters that are not very well solved for them. What if I come next to them and start talking about these items? Won't I be harming them? Especially if I talk bad about that things? Suppose I start talking about my views on wars, conflicts, etc. next to a veteran soldier without knowing that he is one. And then it starts triggering hurtful memories for him, especially, as I said, if my views are not that nice and my words are quite damaging, like fire. This is indeed fire consuming concealed objects. In the final distinguishing feature of fire, our sages kindly remind us that those who feed the fire, so that it ends up getting out of control, are also liable for the damages caused by such fire. So from this metaphor we are creating, it is also relevant to consider what participation we might be having at harming others, even if we ourselves have not started the damage. So let's suppose someone started talking about someone else. In the Talmud, we often use the archetype names of Reuven and Shimon. Reuven started gossiping about Shimon, plain Lashon Hara, evil tongue, evil speech, for instance. And then I join the talk and also start talking about Shimon. This is akin to pouring a gallon of gasoline into the bonfire. It poisons the heart of those in the conversation, listening to it and maybe talking, and it will of course damage Shimon. We need to realize that we have a part in the responsibility to any damage if we are the ones feeding this fire, even if we haven't started the fire ourselves. I hope this video can be a fitting material to feed your good fire, so as to spread light and warmth to those around you. Please remember that these last reflections are triggered by the study of the Talmud and are totally my own ideas and reflections, not teachings extracted directly from the sages. They are only an initial attempt of mine to show you how underneath an apparent dryness and harshness of the legal halachic text, we can discover stimulating questions and insights for our lives. I could, of course, have explored a million different aspects of the Dapim studied this week, but I hope the attempt proves useful for your spiritual growth. I want to ask you, how do you feel about these considerations? Please share your thoughts in the comments, okay? And as always, if you liked this video, Please click the like button, click share, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check other projects in my channel. And if you feel that the video has moved you somehow, please consider becoming a member through the Patreon or the Members Club here in YouTube. Thank you for watching, and I wish you a fruitful week with your Torah and Talmud studies. Stay healthy, stay tuned, and all the best. See you next week. Shavua Tov.